Every year, Yellowstone National Park experiences a range of earthquakes, most of them minor. These quakes provide a peek into the magma chamber beneath the park. In 2022 alone, there were 2,429 earthquakes, the strongest being a magnitude 4.2. About 66% of these quakes occurred in clusters near Grizzly Lake. Now, the big news is Yellowstone National Park has gone silent, closed up shop. But why, you ask? Well, Fox News correspondent Peter Doocy has unveiled that this abrupt closure aims to mitigate the risks of a supervolcano eruption, which has spiked by a staggering 320%. But what's the story behind the supervolcano eruption, and should we be concerned about it? What are the chances of its explosion, as per Peter Doocy? Alright, let's start with Yellowstone. This place is like the crown jewel of US national parks. It's seen a lot in its time. 150 million years is no joke. The land here has been squeezed, stretched, frozen, eroded, and it's even had a few volcanic tantrums. All of these actions have sculpted the jaw-dropping mountains, canyons, and plateaus that make Yellowstone so darn special. Now, those mountains and canyons might seem like they're stuck in time, but let me tell you, they're still very much alive. It's got over 10,000 thermal features and geysers that shoot water 100 feet into the air. Now, most of it hangs out in Wyoming, but it spills into Montana and Idaho too. And let's not forget, it's a wildlife haven with around 300 bird species, 16 fish flavors, and 67 types of mammals, from grizzly bears to wolves and moose. Oh, and Yellowstone Lake, that's a massive 132 square mile beauty, the biggest mountain lake in North America. It's a hotspot for boating, fishing, and soaking in amazing views, but hey, it's just one of the serene lakes and rivers that paint this gorgeous park. But here's the million-dollar question. What happens if that dormant volcano decides to stretch its legs? And how did they figure out it's safe to hang out there? Inside Yellowstone's history, we're talking way back, like 11,000 years ago. The oldest human leftovers were found right here on the shores of Yellowstone Lake. Now, this place hides one of the planet's most active volcanoes, earning it the title of a supervolcanic system. So, to understand just how dangerous this supervolcano might be, we've got to dive deeper into the whole system. You see, this park is sitting on top of this colossal active volcanic system, and that's what's given birth to all those jaw-dropping geothermal features. Probably the coolest bunch of hotspots on Earth. This area had 3 of these really massive eruptions in its history: 2.1 million years ago, 1.3 million years ago, and 664,000 years ago. The last of those, at Yellowstone Lava Creek, ejected so much material from below that it left a 34-mile by 50-mile depression in the ground, what we see today as the Yellowstone caldera. The scientists think that these big blowouts happen roughly every 100,000 years. The supervolcano is packing some serious heat, with a massive magma reserve about 5 miles beneath the park. And guess what feeds that beast? A deep-rooted plume of molten rock straight from the Earth's depths. Now, here's the big question. Are volcanic eruptions in Yellowstone something to worry about? Historically, most eruptions have been pretty tame, like minor lava flows. The last notable one was about 70,000 years ago, at the Pitchstone Plateau. But here's the thing, the potential for a super eruption grabs the world's attention. What's a supervolcano eruption, you ask? It's like a magnitude 8 or higher on the Volcanic Explosivity Index, which means it would spew out at least 1,000 cubic kilometers of rock and ash in a single eruption. To put it into perspective, that's enough to bury an area the size of Texas under 5 feet of volcanic debris. Now that's a lot. Now, a supervolcanic eruption wouldn't just shake up Yellowstone. It could affect a big chunk of North America. So you can bet researchers are keeping a close eye on this place. They're monitoring everything, from the geothermal activities to the tiniest rumble. It's all about understanding the volcanic processes and potential hazards. How would an eruption reshape this park beyond its lush forests and stunning landscapes? Well, that's a question scientists are hard at work to answer. The last time they completely shut things down was on March 24th, 2020, during the COVID-19 pandemic. Unfortunately, threats can lead to park closures, but as Peter Doocy pointed out, sometimes these shutdowns are just unavoidable. The Parks Authority is doing its best to handle these threats, with the supervolcano being the big one on their radar. Now, these super eruptions don't happen all the time, thank goodness. They're spaced hundreds of thousands of years apart, but when they do occur, they can have global consequences. So you can see why keeping a close eye on Yellowstone is essential. The Yellowstone Volcanic Observatory, or YVO for short, plays a vital role. They monitor its volcanic activities, trying to understand how this geological wonder behaves and, most importantly, how to prepare for potential calamities. This constant research and observation aren't just for show. They're all about public safety and expanding our knowledge of this incredible place. Recent studies from Montana State University have even uncovered intricate details about that massive eruption that gave birth to the Yellowstone caldera 631,000 years ago. Now, let's talk about Steamboat Geyser, a real showstopper. It erupted for the first time in more than 3 years back on March 15, 2018, and boy, did it kick off a new era of activity. Since then, it erupted over 100 times, sending plumes of hot water soaring as high as 377 feet. Now, that's the tallest eruption ever seen from an active geyser anywhere on Earth. The current period, which started in 2018, is still ongoing, but nobody knows how long this intense activity will last. What if that supervolcano under Yellowstone decided to go boom? Well, that's the million-dollar question. And trust me, scientists are working hard to figure out what would really happen if that ever went down. But the thought of happening, it's something we need to take seriously. Now, if such a beast were to erupt, here's what we might expect. First off, it's not going to be a sudden surprise. There'd likely be a series of warnings, like smaller lava flows and a somewhat typical volcanic eruption. These could be preceded by a swarm of earthquakes as magma makes its way up to the surface. You can bet there'd be a whole lot of earthquake activity all over the park, and it might take weeks or even months for these earthquakes to crack open the rocks above the magma before the volcano decides to blow its top. But here's where it gets serious. In the case of a super eruption, which is 1,000 times more powerful than the normal one, the real damage comes from the volcanic ash. We're talking about the ash made up of broken rock and glass, being launched miles up into the atmosphere and spreading far and wide. Based on past eruptions, we can picture it creating a massive umbrella-shaped cloud that stretches out in all directions. Then, the northern Rockies might get buried underneath 3 feet of this stuff. And that's going to be absolutely disastrous for parts of Wyoming, Idaho, Colorado, Montana, and Utah. And with all that ash up in the air travel would probably have to come to a screeching halt over a large chunk of North America. But the ripple effects of such an eruption would go global. Volcanoes have this nifty trick of releasing sulfur aerosols that bounce sunlight back into the atmosphere. While they don't stick around for long, they can mess with the climate. Past volcanic eruptions like Tambora in 1850 and Pinatubo in 1991 caused the temporary cooling of the Earth's climate and had some pretty nasty effects on crops and food production. But maybe we can use some cooling down. What do you think? So the bottom line here is that volcanoes are about as unpredictable as it gets, and their eruptions are no different. That's why keeping a close eye on what's happening beneath the surface and being aware of the raw power of Mother Nature is absolutely essential.